In June 2017, Prime Minister Narendra Modi was one of the first overseas leaders to meet Emmanuel Macron. The French president had just won his first election. The world was skeptical about Macron's victory. He was an outsider, an unknown quantity. But the two leaders got along, Modi and Macron. 5 years later, the Indian Prime Minister returned to Paris. He is the first world leader to meet Macron after his re-election. As we saw before, there was bonhomie on full display, complete with a bear hug. This was a short working visit. So the two leaders were quick to get down to business, and we can tell you about three key takeaways from their discussions. One, both sides will work together to end hostilities in Ukraine. Two, they will expand their defense cooperation. And three, India and France will collaborate in space. So even sky is not the limit. Let's unpack these developments in the next few minutes, starting with takeaway number one, the war in Ukraine. India and France are largely on the same page on this. Paris still condemns Moscow for its aggression. New Delhi is still reluctant to name Russia. So what is significant this time? It is the joint statement. The French condemnation is a part of the joint statement. When Prime Minister Modi was in Germany, Berlin issued a separate release. But in the case of France, it's different. Their objections were included in the joint statement, and that's worth noting. I have a copy of it with me. This is what it says. France reiterates its strong condemnation of the unlawful and unprovoked aggression against Ukraine by Russian forces. Well, this would not have been possible unless India explicitly agreed to it. Both France and India have set the same goals for themselves. They want an immediate ceasefire. They want a diplomatic solution to this conflict. And these two countries, India and France, are uniquely placed to achieve these objectives. Modi and Macron are among the few world leaders who can speak to both the parties, Ukraine and Russia, and of course the US. They have direct lines of communication with Moscow and Kyiv. In fact, before meeting Prime Minister Narendra Modi, President Macron spoke with both leaders. He spoke to Vladimir Putin on Tuesday, and he spoke with Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky on Saturday. So India and France have agreed to leverage this influence. They've decided to intensify coordination on Ukraine, and they're also worried about the impact of the war on the rest of the world, especially the increasing prices of essentials, the high inflation. Everyone around the world is suffering the consequences of this war. It has disrupted food supply chains. Modi and Macron have called for a multilateral response to this. Takeaway number two, the defense ties. India and France have a lot going for them on this front. Their militaries now participate in 5 joint drills. The focus is on the Indo-Pacific. Paris has been pushing Europe to play a more meaningful role in this region, and the reason is China. France is concerned about the growing Chinese influence in the region. So it wants to work with India. France was the first European nation to adopt an Indo-Pacific strategy. Now it wants to elevate defense ties with India and boost defense production. So far, France was a seller of weapons to India, the second largest arms supplier to India. Russia, of course, is the largest. Now, France wants to become an investor. It wants to invest in India's defense industry. One project has already been completed. France has helped India build 6 Scorpion submarines. And for this, the French agreed to a technology transfer. The last submarine was launched just 2 weeks back. France wants to work on more such projects with India. Both sides have agreed to look for more opportunities for future collaboration. The third big takeaway is perhaps the most exciting. India and France are joining hands to collaborate in space. The leaders reached an agreement in Paris. They're setting up a bilateral strategic dialogue. It will be held later this year. Experts from both sides will sit down to discuss the growing challenges in space. The agenda is expansive. It includes the economy of space, the security challenges, and the kind of rules that should apply in space. So this is what they're working together on. World powers want to write the rules of engagement in space. India is an active player in this discussion. In fact, France will be the third country to have this dialogue with India. New Delhi has held similar engagements with the United States and Japan on rules in space. So these are the key developments from Paris. But more could happen in the coming weeks. France wants holds the rotating presidency of the European Union. France is the current president. It will keep the seat till the end of June this year. India has resumed negotiating a free trade deal with the EU. Other major European nations are already backing the pact. A vote of confidence from France could seal the deal. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.